Welcome to the Waiting Warriors podcast. I'm Michelle Bowler. I'm an Army wife of over 8 years, a mom of 4 little girls, and a huge believer that being a supportive military or first responder loved one is way easier when you connect with a community. In addition to sharing some of my own insights and journey, I have set out to interview waiting warriors around the world so we can all learn together from their triumphs and their struggles. Together, we can do so much more than just survive. We can thrive. And that is what being a waiting warrior is all about. Hey, waiting warriors out there. Welcome to another week on the Waiting Warriors podcast. This week we have, I say this a lot, but I'm really excited for this guest. This is somebody I've been wanting to talk to for a long time because she's basically me, but just years ahead.
Down the road.
down the road.
Right.
But I've loved watching, that sounds creepy.
No.
But it's Instagram. That's what we're supposed to
Right.
do.
I was going to say, isn't that why we do social media?
Yeah. But watching her family and watching her journey. So welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you. So Stephanie is a stay-at-home mom to 5 girls ranging of age to 14 to 5. So she has all, I mean, except for the newborn phase, but you've definitely done that. But you're at a really, you're at a really interesting phase. Married for 17 years.
Yes.
The whole time to her soldier, because you guys met at West Point, right?
He was a cadet. I was at Baylor. So yes, I met him as a football playing West Point cadet many years ago.
That's super fun. And you have 16 months of deployment under your belt.
Yeah, I was adding it up the other day, and I think it might actually be a little bit higher. It might be closer to 70, but let's just say 60 to 70. Yeah, 9 deployments. So
that's a lot in 17 years and 9 deployments. So how much of that was with kids?
Okay, so we got married in 2003. So, right when it got real fast. We were supposed to get married at West Point, and he came home from Ranger School and said, I'm going to be deployed when you want to get married. So we kind of planned it in a week. We called it our preacher. This is funny. He was like, it's a modern day war wedding, or like the shotgun wedding without the baby. Everyone's like, why do we have to hurry home for this wedding? I'm like, he's just deploying. It's fine. Yeah. So he left that. We got married in March. I finished teaching and moved to Fort Drum. He was gone in June. So he was gone in June. I had no job, no friends, knew nothing about, never been in the snow in my life, knew nothing about being a military wife. So that was our first pre-kid deployment. That was 10 months, 11 months. It was supposed to be 6 and got extended, as they all did back then, I think. So I had that one. And then we went to Ranger Battalion, where he would leave for 4.5 months every 9 months or so. So we had a couple of those before we had Harper. So we had one big one and a couple abbreviated special forces type deployments. And then the next big one was the Korengal Valley deployment to Afghanistan in 2000. Sadie was a few months old. So he left when she was 4 months old, 5 months old, and came back a year later. So that was the first one. And to this day, the hardest one. That was a really scary. I mean, they're not even there anymore. If you see Restrepo or Korengal, that was Jimmy and his guys. It was not a good place to be. So that was the first big one. And then we went back and did some Ranger Regiment deployments. And then we had to think through this. Gosh, 5 kids later. We did not have one. We had Kate and Lucy. So I had twins, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and he was in the Ranger Battalion in Savannah. So had quite a few then. And then we had a really big break. We went to Rhode Island for school. We went to Italy for 3 years, and we never saw him because he worked all the time, but he had a little Latvia deployment. They went to the Baltic states, a rapid deployment. But other than that, the twins and Cora, who was born in Italy, didn't really know deployments until we went to Alaska. Yeah. So we went to Fort Wainwright for him to do his battalion command. And at the time, deployment was not even part of the conversation, because not like anyone's. I always tell young spouses, they're never undeployable. So please don't fall into the trap of saying my husband isn't deployed. that will just jinx you.
Yeah.
But they were, they were saying Wainwright hadn't gone anywhere in forever, and 321 infantry was just going to be, not going to be the situation. And then boom, he goes to Syria, and we have very short notice. Goes to Syria. I have 5 daughters. I'm in Fort Wainwright where it's -40 and dark almost all day in the winter. And his few-month deployment turned into almost a year. He ended up
Mhm.
being gone 323 days, I think. So that's the last one we did.
And that
So we've been,
overlapped with the pandemic, right?
yes, he was in Syria until July. He came
Okay.
home in July. So pandemic, March, February,
Right.
March, we started figuring that out. So that was a doozy. It was funny because we say we jinxed ourselves because when he left, he was like, "It's not the Korengal Valley. Like, we're gonna be awesome. We did that. This is gonna be nothing." And then like Turkey comes into Syria and they have to flee Syria, and then they're in Iraq, and uh, then we see on the news that missiles have hit in where they are in Iraq, and I'm like, "You've
Mhm.
gotta be kidding me. At some point, am I too old for this?" I was better at doing it in my 20s, and in my 40s, I'm much more like, "Hey, we'll survive, been there, done that," but that some days I'm just like, my eyes twitching and my kids are all yelling, and I'm like, "What is happening?" But did it, survived it, and now we're back at West Point where it all started, which is pretty cool, so
It is. It's pretty cute watching everything that you're like, "And this is where this happened, and we love this street," and it's a cute place.
It's funny because we'll go around post and I'll share pictures on Instagram, and some of my fellow West Point girlfriends will be like, "Oh, I think I made out in those bushes." Like they remember all the specific makeout spots from West Point, which makes me laugh really hard. So it's been a really great to see him. The joke is he came to West Point to play football, was great at football, not a great cadet. And now that he is like the superintendent's right hand man, everyone's like, "Does the soup know what a crap cadet you are?" And he's like, "No, and he's not gonna know." So it's kind of like the big full circle. Now he's almost 20 years into his career and coming back. So anyway,
Yeah,
things are pretty good right now.
that's fun.
Yeah,
So, how do you I mean, this is, like, such a loaded question,
right,
but I feel like you'll have a good answer. How do you keep your sanity? Like you said you survived.
right,
How do you do that? How do you go through all of that? 5 kids,
right.
um, in all these different places, all these different deployments, helping yourself and your kids get through the deployments. But how do you do that and keep your sanity and theirs?
I mean, well, it ebbs and flows. There's some deployments I look at, and like I talked about it the other day, it's a blur.
Mhm.
I wasn't in a good place. I pretended I was in a good place, but I didn't have family helping me. I didn't have um, an identity outside of my kids, which is when it gets dangerous when you don't have the things that make you you outside of your precious children. And I just
Mhm.
held on tight and wasn't in a good place. I might have like found a church I liked that helped me survive, or found when the twins were little in Savannah, I was at the YMCA and I'd work out like twice a day,
Hmm.
or I'd
Nice.
work out once a day. Then I'd go sit in the room, in the locker room and blow dry my hair and just stare at the mirror to get that second hour of free childcare. So sometimes that's what got me through. To be totally honest, I have had from 1 to 5 sets of eyes watching me at all times. So I don't have the luxury of feeling sorry for myself.
Mhm.
I don't have the luxury of publicly breaking down because I'm modeling resiliency and attitude to my daughters every day. So I always say, I want to write a book about 5 daughters and their adventures when their soldiers gone. We've always called it our adventures. And sometimes it's not so great. Sometimes it was going to Target and having 2 walking and 3 in like the double decker roller coaster stroller. And like
Yeah.
I'm wearing slippers and my eyes twitching, and people are like, I'm not real sure she's okay. And like I probably wasn't.
Yeah.
But it's easier now. They're older. I have 2 teenagers, and we really like cling to each other in those situations, right? It's not as much as me having to take care of everyone as us all loving and taking care of each other now. So I feel
Mhm.
like once you get, when the pandemic hit, we were just everybody was freaked out, right? We didn't know what
Yeah.
was going on. I was already completely isolated in Alaska. Then add to that, like, what the heck is happening? And we talk about that time so fondly. The other day, Harper and Sadie were like, "Hey, it's almost 1 year since the pandemic hit. We should like get a giant block of Costco cheese, watch Dawson's Creek, and bake every night like we did. Like, we miss it. Let's have a celebration." And so, it's hard, but a different kind of hard.
Mhm.
Um, it's more, I always tell young spouses, you don't get better at it. So if somebody tells you it's going to get better, you're going to get better, I'm sorry, like that's a flat out lie.
Yeah.
And that's not productive to anyone. It does not get easier. It's loving someone and missing them does not ever get better.
Mhm.
However, you get better at faking it, is what I always tell spouses, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to crush this. I've got my people. I've got, my workout plan or my church or my books or my job. And you just put your head down and you power through. And
Mhm.
so there were a lot of times I can look back and like it really brings me to tears because I remember just how lonely and out of control I felt in that moment. Just
Mhm.
sitting there surrounded by wild and when I was had the twins, I was sitting in the chair feeding them all day. Like Harper and Sadie were naked, like wild, like matted hair, feeding themselves. And I was just like, I don't I don't know. The only way out is through it. The only
Yeah.
way out is through it. And
Yeah.
here they are, like, absolutely crushing being teenagers. They do and
Mhm.
say things. I'm like, God, y'all are amazing. Like, they are so confident and just, they know they can handle it because they've handled it before.
Mhm.
So there's not one easy answer beyond the obvious. Like, find your thing, find your people. You got to have your people, even if it's your person.
Mhm.
And then just put your head down and pray and power your way through it. And then one day it's just over and you're like, oh, thank God.
Wait,
And then it's time to start again.
yeah. So how, like, I don't know, this is it may be a weird question, but it's one. Sorry, can you hear my
Rel- relatable,
Okay,
relatable. Been there.
sorry. I don't know how that loud that was for everybody
Oh.
else. But, how did so often I know military spouses, and I've asked it myself, like,
Right,
I don't want military life to ruin my kids. Do you know what I
right,
mean? Like, because it's hard having your dad gone all the time.
right.
Your dad, I mean, one, there's the like you missing them, but then your dad is
Hmm.
there for the school plays and
Right,
you scoring the, I don't know, soccer goal or whatever, or learning
right,
the thing on gymnastics, like all of those things, um, plus moving and stuff. Like,
right.
how do you keep all those military things from, quote unquote, ruining your kids? Because, like, you
Well,
see
first,
families that does happen.
right.
So
Well, first you
yours,
realize that it's
mhm,
most likely not ruining them, it's shaping them.
okay,
And that's not to say it's not hard. I'm getting to see it being hard in a whole other way now that I have teenagers. Like,
yeah,
you think it's hard when your kids are little, wait till you see them absolutely being ripped away from their friends and
yeah,
having their hearts broken. And it doesn't it's I think it goes through every parent's mind. Like, is this making them stronger? Will they survive this? Is this but it was interesting going back to when the pandemic hit. It's like every single person they knew that was not a military kid was like, "Ah, what do we do? What do we do? Like, we can't do this. Our plans changed. Like, this got canceled. We can't see this person." And my kids are just kind of like watching the world fall down around them, like, welcome to my world.
yeah,
You do it. And I will say it's going to be interesting to see them as they grow and what they choose for their lives. I think one of
mhm,
them will marry somebody in the military because I'm just telling you the older ones. I don't know the younger ones yet. One's
yeah,
going to run as far as she can. She's already
yeah,
like, nope. And the other one's like, I love it. But to go circle back, like first of all, you can't think about if you're going to ruin them because that will drive you insane. You can't I cannot change the fact that Jimmy Howell is doing what he does, right? I've always
mhm,
said this. I can change my reaction and how we choose to face it. We choose to be positive about it. The fact that it's hard and the fact that we get frustrated isn't going to do a damn thing about his job. He's still going to have that job, right? And
yeah,
so you can either choose, these aren't circumstances we can change right now. This is a conversation we'll revisit later and see what we want to do on the next step and if we still think
mhm,
it's worth it. And so far, it absolutely has been. But you have to look at it, especially when they're little. There were so many times I worried, like, oh, they're going to remember this forever. They're going to be so scarred. They don't remember. They remember all the really good stuff, right? And,
yeah,
and even when Harper was, I still remember that rapid deployment in Italy. he kind of came home and he was leaving in like 2 days, right? And Harper, he hadn't been gone for a long time since Harper was itty bitty, and she was in like third or fourth grade, and she had a big part in the play. And the play was going to happen in a few weeks, and he was going to miss it. And so we were in the car telling them he was leaving, and I was just steeled for like a total meltdown, right? I thought she was going to start crying and screaming, and I, I Jimmy grabbed my hand later and said, "They're like a reflection of who you are and who you've made them to be, and you should have like given her more grace and judged her more positively in that moment." Because I told her, and all I heard from this little backseat, her little voice in the backseat was, "Well, I'm going to miss you, but mommy's going to take lots of pictures, and you're going to go do your job, and we'll do our job here." And I
Mhm.
just bawled. I just went and cried and cried and cried because you never know if you are building your children up. Like there was some great analogy I heard that I can never remember. Something about you're building a boat, right? And you have a big, beautiful, strong boat, and you're hoping it can stay afloat even though you keep poking holes in it, right? And that's what I feel like with my kids. I'm like, somehow, despite all of this, you are shining beautiful examples of just strength and grace. And yeah, it sucks. Sometimes we're like, we hate this. And I'm like, I hate it too. Because
Yeah.
it's not productive to have toxic positivity ever. I'm never going to
Yeah.
tell them to not feel the way they feel. However, the trade off is always worth it for them and for me. Everyone's like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, because I get Jimmy Howell at the end of the day. Like, there is no trade off for me. Like, what else would I do? Go be somewhere stable and not have him? It's
Yeah.
it's a non-conversation for me because everyone's like, y'all are so brave to do that. I'm like, we'd follow him anywhere. We'd follow
Mhm.
him anywhere. Like Alaska, sure. Captain Screw course for 4 months, why not? Like
Yeah.
it's just it's they are so funny and interesting and strong and different and have the coolest stories because of their upbringing. So for moms of young children, don't like if they're struggling, have them talk to someone. Absolutely give them the help they need. It's a hard thing, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to define them or ruin them. It's going to just do amazing things for your kids that you never could have even imagined. So, and I'm seeing that every day now.
Yeah. Is that, because you said, like, we would follow him
Right.
anywhere because that means, why would we leave this because the reward is that we get to be with him. Is that
Right.
something that you've said out loud and your kids have heard or that your kids say now? I'm just
Oh,
curious.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm 100% like, the whole I'll go wherever you go. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, I just take me, like, get the book of Ruth, and that is my life. Like, your
Yeah.
people are my people. I will go. And they know that. Like, they think it's disgusting that I love him so much and that we still like hold hands, kiss. And they're like, you're disgusting. You're making out. I'm like, one day you'll realize this is kind of rare.
Yeah.
It's kind of rare to have someone together this long that's still like so annoyingly obsessed with each other. And this is your deal. Like, your dad's it for me. So
Yeah.
if you want to have mom, you're gonna have to follow dad. And of course, like I always say, we'll revisit that. They're coming into high school. If we've got a couple years here, maybe a third, if he can do remote war college when he's a colonel. And then that might put Harper having to do senior year somewhere else. So maybe then we have that conversation of do I stay?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It depends. And I cannot spend my time breaking down all the different outcomes of what might happen or I'll go insane. So we'll have
Mhm.
that conversation in a couple years when, we're
Needs
always
to
willing
happen.
to make the yeah. So who knows?
Yeah. But I love that idea of it's it's not gonna ruin them, it's gonna shape them as long
Yeah.
as you, like, help them through it and
You acknowledge it.
yeah.
You like say, I mean, even whether it's to my teenager saying, yeah, I hear you, that's hard, or
Mhm.
to my 5-year old saying, yeah, we feel big feelings. It's okay to feel big feelings. Like it's the same concept all the way across. I hear you. It's hard. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. How can I help you? How can we what can we control? Is
Yeah.
kind of the conversation you need to have. So,
Yeah. I'm curious because we have recently had this conversation with our girls because my husband's
right,
supposed to leave, and by the time this airs, he'll be, like, long gone, so I'm not breaking up
right,
or anything.
right.
But, so we just recently told our girls that he's gonna have to leave again, and we don't know how long, we don't even know where yet type of a thing,
Yep.
and my 4-year-old asked
But why does daddy have to go? Like,
Right,
why does daddy have to be a soldier? What
right.
has your answer been for that? Because 'Cause I'm assuming you've been asked that question.
Right. Well, so he usually answers that to them, and
Mhm,
he has an answer that's always like, "I do what I do because, I believe in our country and I protect the Constitution and I
mhm,
protect you. I'm doing this and loving you and protecting you, so
mhm.
the people that don't have to want to do it don't have to do it like your mom." No, just kidding. Um, but he has a lot of great stories. He has a flag from every deployment that he's worn on his back that he folds and gives to them when he gets home, and they kind of have that as a tangible reminder of what he's doing and why he believes it's important. And we've just always kind of created the culture of what he does is I believe it's a calling. A lot
Mhm,
of times I have young moms with young soldiers message me through Instagram and say, "What do I do? I don't want him to do this, but he's already done it." Well, first of all, don't tell him that. He's already done it. He's a man, he's made the choice, or a woman, they're grown up.
mhm,
But I also believe that, I know you guys are your husband's a
mhm.
chaplain.
Yeah,
It's a double calling, but I really think it's a calling. I've always
yeah,
considered it a calling. Um, and it's what your dad was born to do and what he believes in, and it's that's kind of that.
yeah,
So
yeah. Because when you think about it that way, it's like, you wouldn't want your dad to do something that he wasn't made to do,
yeah,
right? Like,
like you want him sitting behind a desk from 9 to 5 doing insurance, he would be the most miserable human being on earth. When everyone's like, what is he doing when he gets out? I'm like, first of all, we don't talk about that, but when he does, it will never be anything normal or boring. One day I caught him like looking at jobs on the CIA website or something years ago. I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to do this to me, aren't you? You're going to do something even crazier that I don't even have like the support of these
yeah,
other families. But he will never sit at a desk. He would
yeah,
lose his mind. And they know, I mean, they know that. It's hard. It's hard right now. I mean, in the job he's in right now, he is working even more than he did as a battalion commander, which I did not think was possible. And we are seeing him less. And
mhm,
it's a little bit like, oh, trying, like fighting that bitterness of being snarky, like, "Oh, nice to see you," but that doesn't help anything. It's not
yeah,
gonna change the fact he has to do it. So, we just model a lot of like I said, you can only choose the way you respond to it. He's not changing what he's doing anytime soon. He's always been this crazy adventure seeking ranger that I never know where he is and what he's doing, and now that I do, I'm still like I mean, heck, so
still just running around crazy.
no, and we're just going wherever. All right. It's funny, before Alaska, he was like, "All right, Stephanie, I'm gonna put in my preferences for battalion command," and we're at the point now, it doesn't really matter anymore. Like, we can put in the preferences, but they're sending, like, brigade command. I'm like he's like, "Well, how should we rank it?" I'm like, "I learned my lesson. I don't care." Like, they're gonna send us where they want us for brigade command, but we had put Bragg and, we have a lot of family in Cary and in North Carolina, so we were like, "Oh, yeah, this, that," and, battalion command list came out, and he was like, "Okay, Steph, I'm like, I see that look in your eyes. You're gonna do it to me again, aren't you? Like, what? I know that look on your face. What's happening?" And he's like, "We're going to Alaska." And I'm like, like crazy, like maniacal, like glazed face laugh. And he's like, "No, really." I'm like, "Okay, well, at least like Richardson, right? The big city one, Anchorage."
Mhm.
And he was like, "We're going to Fairbanks." And I was like, "Oh my sweet baby Jesus." I went in my room and cried for 24 hours and I wouldn't talk to him. And then I came out and I was like, let's do this. Like classic Stephanie. Give me 24 hours and I've like got their school researched. I know this. I've
Mhm.
found the church. He's like, you're insane.
But I think,
Ah,
like, that's the perfect example of, you're not supposed to have the feelings. You're
yeah.
not supposed
Oh
to
no, I didn't hide it.
be
I was
mad. Yeah,
pissed. I like would not look at him. He still talks about how mad I was. But then I was like, what is the point? I'm
yeah.
being a giant baby, and I will tell you, the older I get, I tell another thing I talk to young spouses about. I'm stressed. I wanted to go here, and we're going to go to Polk. I go, I really believe that God has always sent us where we can make the biggest impact. Do
Yeah,
I think we made a bigger impact in Fairbanks than we could have at Fort Bragg? Absolutely. And in hindsight, I see that.
yeah,
We wanted to go back. Jimmy wanted to go back to the Ranger Battalion as a field grade. That didn't happen. It was pretty devastating. And we ended up going to Italy like there is always a bigger, better, and more beautiful plan for us than we could have imagined.
Yeah.
And that's in life. I mean, look at my life. I wanted in college, oh, we're gonna have a boy and a girl. Like, what? First of all, who decides that? Second of all, no. I was like, we're gonna have one boy and one girl. It's gonna be perfect. And he was like, well, maybe three. And I was like, okay, three. So we had Harper and Sadie. He taught me into three. It was twins. So we went from two to four. And I'm like looking around for the like, I'm like, is like, am I being punked? Like looking for cameras because this is always my life. And then we get to Italy and I keep being like, like four kids. Maybe we should, plan surgery. And he's like, that's so permanent. I'm like, five kids will be permanent too. And then boom, like I'm 38 years old, having Cora in Italy, come home with a baby. I'm like, what? Oh, like it's so funny. We always joke, she is a product of Prosecco and cappuccino and thinking you have control over your life when you don't. And she's the best. I would not change my life for anything, but like I never left Texas. I went to
Mhm.
Baylor. I was in my bubble. All my friends looked like me. All my friends felt like me. I never challenged myself. I didn't know anything. I meet this West Point cadet, and now I'm like, if you would have told me 20 years ago, when we moved here, we joked. I said, if we were Trophy Point, we stood right there and kissed. If somebody would have told you, you'll be back here in
Mhm.
17 years with five daughters, what would you say? And Jimmy's like, I can't beep, beep, beep. Like, I can't repeat it. But I think like this is just my life. It's not just his job and deployments. Like I have just absolutely you have to laugh or you'll cry is my whole life theme.
Mhm.
So, it's
Yeah.
gonna be fine. Just try to like buckle up and make it an adventure or you'll go crazy.
Yeah. So you cry and then you decide, okay, I don't need to cry anymore. And then you just figure it out and then
Yeah,
make it an adventure.
yeah,
I like that. I could do
yeah.
that. I can do
And
that.
then I tell a lot of young people, you're not gonna love everywhere, right? You're
Mhm.
gonna like love your church, but the kids don't have a very good school, or you're going to love your house and you don't have any friends, right? Or you're going to have all the friends in the world and not feel so great about yourself, or like it's always a switch off. You might have a really great gym, but you don't
Mhm.
have anyone to talk to. There's always going to be a plus and then sometimes more negatives than others about certain places you go. But my God, all the people in Fort Wainwright just it was miserable. Facebook groups devoted to just complaining, and I
Yeah.
just would say, "Hey," again, I'm not here for the toxic positivity. I'm not here to say lie about how you feel if you're
Yeah.
struggling, but there is no point in being knowingly negative about circumstances you can't change.
Mhm.
Just finding the one thing you do like or the one person you like and just holding on tight and forcing yourself to find the bright side, was life changing for me.
Yeah.
So,
So how do you do that with your kids? What does that look like? I know like maybe specifically like Wainwright. That is dark,
right,
that is cold. You had a lot of at that point you had all your kids
right.
and a deployment and a pandemic. Like but how do you or how did you, find that adventure and still find that positive?
I'm insanely outgoing. Like when you take Myers Briggs and you've got the E or the I, right? Jimmy's as far as you can go on the I, and I'm as far like bust through the E wall off the paper, and that's me. Never been an issue. I mean,
Mhm.
I did not get there during COVID, so I didn't have that challenge. I'd been there for a year and a half before COVID hit. So, but I will say, as I get older, I have to fight the whole. I'm over it. I'm done. Before we moved here, I said I'm not even going to try at West Point. This is the last place. I'm not going to make friends. And my friend
Uh-huh.
Pamela looked at me and she goes, if there is one person in the world that I do not believe that coming out of your mouth, it's you. You will never not aggressively make friends. And I was like,
Mhm.
fine. Um, but, it could be as small as like forcing yourself to talk to a neighbor. I planned it was like find the sun, find the bright side socials for the battalion where I would just have the ladies and the men get out of their house, bring their babies, and let me feed them. I would
Mhm.
have restaurants donate food, and we would just sit and talk. I'd say, you don't even have to talk, but just to be in a room around other grown-ups, whether that's, again, COVID makes it hard, but
Mhm.
getting involved in a church or a book club, or I talk to everyone. Um, I mean, Jimmy jokes that like I get off the elevator with someone, I'm like, here's my new Facebook friend, so and so. And like I tell them it's not even a joke. Like
Yeah.
airplane, people that text me in the airplane, I'm still friends with them 3 years, like good friends with one woman 3 years later.
That's
Um, you have to put yourself out there. You have to get over the discomfort. Um, and just, I actually was really impressed yesterday. I got a message on Instagram from a partner of one of the new coaches that's about to come here. And she just kind of said, okay, this is going to be weird, but I also love Schitt's Creek. I'm also a reader. I think we like, can we hang out when I get there? Can we
maybe
go on a walk? I feel weird, but like, I think we could be friends. You have to do that.
yeah.
You have to totally, like, my big joke is one day I'm going to be in the yard with a sign saying, will you be my friend? Like, there's a book, I have to find it. It's called Will You Be My Friend? And
Mhm.
Lucy the bear is just trying aggressively to get everyone to be her friend, and nobody wants to be her friend. And at the end, she's around this oasis in the jungle, and there's flamingos, and she's like, "Doesn't anybody want to be my friend?" It's all capitals across 2 pages, and all the birds are like screaming and taking flight and like
Mhm.
terrified. That's me. Like, I am going to force you. I am going to take it. Not only am I going to force you, but if you don't like me, I'm going to take it as a challenge. Like, I will hunt you down and force you to like me. I can't. So I'm a little different than most people because I'm an aggressive friend hunter and friend maker. So for those people that deal with anxiety and being an introvert, I don't have advice for you because
Yeah, it's
I
not
don't
your
I
job.
don't understand that.
Yeah.
However, just like embarrass yourself, whether it's one person that you're like, hey, like your Instagram feed, can we have coffee? Like, just put yourself out there. And the worst that can happen is that person blows you off, and then we're all wearing masks, so like you'll never see them or know who they are again anyway. So who cares? But
It's
just make a fool out of yourself. Like, I really think you're cool. I mean, I had a friend here because it's cold, it's snowing at West Point. We've got COVID. I had a sweet friend just say, "Okay, I really like you. If we don't make the effort, we're never going to hang out. So let's start walking." And so we would just, go walk, and it's like, I think I really like you. You're like auditioning friends.
yeah.
But the older you get, I'm like,
You pass.
forget it. Who cares? Like, I'm too
Yeah.
old to care what everyone thinks anyway. Like, life's too short to stress about someone liking you or not. So put yourself out there, and then for the ones missing out, if they don't respond, is how I try
Yeah.
to look at it.
So if you're listening to this and you're in your 20s, like let's
Do
just jump
Go
that
for
hurdle,
it.
like
And
yeah.
I watch my kids. Cora's been coming home from preschool, and she's like, "I made 4 new friends today." And then the next day, she's like, "I made 2 new friends today. There's only 3 left." And I go, "Well," she goes, "there's only 3 people that I haven't gotten to be my friend yet." And I said, Jimmy said, "How do you do it? Act it out." So she walked him and goes, "Hi, let's be friends." And he was like, "Do you like say my name is Cora?" She was like, "No." And she said, "They all want to be my friend." And I said, "Of course they do." And I looked at Harper, who's 14, and we said, "Oh, dear Lord, if only we could let down our walls and
Mhm.
have that childlike enthusiasm and joy and just say to somebody, I really like you. I want to be your friend. I don't want to play games. I don't want to not return texts. I don't want to like cancel plans. I just want to be your friend." And so I try to channel that the older I get. I'm like, I like you. I want to hang out, you
Yeah.
know. And sometimes it's well received. If it's not, then I'll stalk you. So whatever.
We just gotta go full circle. We gotta channel in that 4 to 5-year-old self that just
Yes.
walked into a room and was like, "Oh,
Just don't stop.
everybody's
Just tell somebody, I like you. Do you want to be my friend? And
Mhm.
if they say no, then move on because somebody else will want to be?
Yeah. How do you, what did you do with your girls to help them kinda see the positives of things and making the most out of things?
I don't think there's something specific. I mean,
Mhm.
we when they were little, we had songs that I would make up and fun stuff we did. I had a Daddy Loves Me to the tune of Jesus Loves Me that I'd sing whenever he was deployed. And
Mhm.
we do all kind of fun things, but there's not one thing. It's me just living with positivity and intention and joy for almost 15 years of parenthood. Um, and if you do things like that intentionally and authentically, not in a fake way, not
Yeah.
like, I'm so happy. Like, they see me cry. They see me cry. We have got on the couch, like, when Jimmy left for Syria, the picture brings tears to my eyes every time I look at it. We got back in the car and we cried, all of us, all 6 of us cried so hard that it turned into that, like, hysterical laughter because we were so embarrassed at how hard we were crying. And I have a picture of that moment and we look at it and we're like, "Ooh." I mean, we cry together. We climb in bed and snuggle and feel yucky together.
Yeah.
And we acknowledge those moments too. So I think it would be living with joy, but also acknowledging the sorrow. But
Mhm.
it's just our life. It's not specific things I do. That's it around here.
Yeah.
I will absolutely sit with you in your sadness and your discomfort, but when it turns into wallowing and pity partying, then we're not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna move.
So,
We're gonna
move
get out
forward. I
more
mean,
peace.
like, how many times have I told them the only way out is through it?
Mhm.
You just got to go through it. It's like when Harper gets or Sadie gets a migraine. It's the same thing. Like, I am so sorry. I know what you're about to go through, and my heart is broken for you. But there's nothing we can do to stop it right now. There's nothing we can do. We can get through it and into
Mhm.
the other side. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, we can't change these circumstances. Like I keep saying, we can only, like, what do we tell our kids? You can't control the way someone else treats you, right? You
Yeah.
can't control the way so and so is going to be. You can control how you choose to respond to it. And it's just kind of like a life thing.
That is life.
Right? I mean, you can certainly throw a big fit and feel sorry for yourself, but it's not gonna make it any more fun. It's not gonna make it any more fun.
Yeah, it's true. Um, Last question. What is your key to thriving that you'd want to share with your fellow waiting warriors?
Okay, my key to thriving. Let me think about this. It's a really good question. It's funny because last year I kept saying, #surviving, not thriving. Like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna be honest, I'm not thriving. I am not blooming where I'm planted right now. I am stagnant. This was at Fort Wayne, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think I mean, it would just be going back to the finding a sliver of joy and choosing that joy. Um, I always tell my girls and I tell myself, be a fountain, not a drain. Um,
Mhm.
and I think a big part of surviving and then thriving has been connecting with others and encouraging them and sharing that light. But I mean, it's all kinds of light for me, right? Like, I'm trying to think the right way to put it. For me, I'm a Christian. And so
Mhm.
that is how I find my light and my joy and my
Mhm.
silver lining. And I'm not even necessarily talking about, being evangelical with people like, let me share the light. No,
Mhm.
but there's a joy that comes out of me and there is a light that comes out of me that I can spread to others by loving and encouraging them well. And that
Mhm.
includes my daughters too. And that is how, I remember when I was turning 40 a few years ago. I was like, "Oh, everyone in society, like, says it's so bad to turn 40." I was feeling kinda down, like, "Am I supposed to feel" and I was being ridiculous, right? And then Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. I was born and raised in Houston, and I
Mhm.
was like, "I'm gonna turn this around, and I'm gonna have a fundraiser for Houston instead," right? So on my 40th birthday, instead of having a pity party to tell me how old I was, which is ridiculous now that I'm 43, I don't even know. I put that energy into sharing positivity and light and encouragement. And I think
Mhm.
that whenever you're feeling sorry for yourself, what's that saying? I was taking a Peloton class the other day and I was annoyed because it was a Robin class and I love her, but she's just so like relentlessly positive. And I was like, oh, I just wanted to do like a 20-minute recovery ride. Like, I don't need to be rah rah. And
Yeah.
then she said something about like where you are now. Think about when you dreamed or prayed or wished of having what you have now or being
Mhm.
where you are now. And taking that and turning it around and focusing on spreading joy and light and love will help when you're feeling like you're stagnant or like
Mhm.
you are surviving and not thriving. So do that, connect, take any connection you can get. If it is one friend in the FRG, if it is your battle buddy, if it is one person that you can reach out to on Instagram and say, this is horrible and I hate it. And they'll say, I get it. Right.
Mhm.
You gotta have your people. That's another I tell that to young spouses think they don't need that now because on the internet you feel like you have connections with people. And you can kind of like break engagements and not show up for stuff and hide behind your screen and you still feel like you have lots of friends. I'm like, you got to have a person. You've got to
Mhm.
put yourself out there and have a person.
Yeah.
So find a person and then just, I mean, I don't, sometimes you just have to laugh at yourself. Listen, you're not going to thrive all the time. And
Yeah.
I do want to circle back to that and say to young spouses, you are not going to thrive. Sometimes you're absolutely, I call it survival mode. You are deep in survival mode.
Mhm.
Somebody's out there telling you, oh, I remember when my husband was a young lieutenant and it was the best, just love it, enjoy it. Or I remember when I had those babies and I wish I could go back. And you're thinking, if you tell me to carpe the freaking diem one more time, I'm going to cut you. I'm going to cut you. I'm going to get a shank and cut you like your
Yeah.
throat
Yeah.
because you're so done. And guys,
Yeah.
it's going to be like that sometimes. That does not mean you're less of a mom or a military spouse because
Mhm.
I will tell you, like, my husband's about to be a freaking colonel and I am a disaster. Like, I am not always thriving. Admit you're not thriving, do the
Mhm.
best you can to get through it. And then, one day you'll look back and be like, "Oh, I vaguely remember that." It's just a blur, but I don't it's okay. It's okay to not have beautiful, precious, thriving moments in this life.
Yeah. It's
Doesn't
not
make you less of
all
a
gonna be that way. Yeah.
no. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like you aren't even surviving. And again, that doesn't make you any less of a woman or a mom or a spouse. Like I think it's even more important to admit to each other, "Hey, I'm not doing so great either. I'm having a really," that was really powerful for me. People expect the boss's wife, the battalion commander's wife.
Yeah.
I certainly had run into enough in my life that were always perfectly polished and put together and said things to me like, "Oh, don't worry. When your children are older, you'll look like me too. I was a mess when I was your age too." And they would just, I remember being like, who is this, right? Like,
Yeah.
why does she have the power to make me feel this way? There's a
Mhm.
certain misperception and stereotype of senior officer spouses. It's there for a reason.
Mhm.
I worked pretty hard at breaking that down and just saying, I absolutely struggle too.
Yeah.
9 deployments in, almost 20 years of marriage. I'm not doing great either. And
Mhm.
there's power in that. And seeing young women and men's eyes kind of light up when I say that, because they've never had anyone senior
Yeah.
be honest with them like that before, has been really, I think, empowering and enlightening to a lot of my young friends. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is because it's like I don't, like you said, like we don't need to wallow. We don't
yeah,
need to be stuck in it and sit in it forever, but
right.
that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And that, yeah, that doesn't mean you don't acknowledge it because
Yeah.
that's just damaging. It's damaging to not acknowledge it and to not speak it and not to name it and not to admit it.
Mm.
That doesn't, that does, like I said earlier, when senior spouses be like, oh, it gets better. Like, it's a flat out disservice. It's a
Yeah.
flat out disservice to say those things. It is absolutely hard. It is hard. And sometimes it will be terrible and unbearable. And you think you can't do it for one more day. But it absolutely does, I'm talking about deployments here, but just military life in general, it gets, it ebbs and flows. It's hard. It's really, really hard sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
So last question. I know we've mentioned
I
your
could talk forever. So
Well, it's like this is the last real question about the topic, but
okay.
we've mentioned your Instagram. What is that Instagram, and is that the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah. So I blogged for about 15 years. That's still there. That's just stephaniehowell.com. I'm kind of trying to start writing there a little bit more. I could tell I was missing it because my latest few Instagram posts are like mini blog posts anyway. I'm like, maybe I should go back. But yeah, my Instagram is at Stephanie Howell. I'm really responsive to, well, I will tell you this. I'm not great with the others folder or the like others DMs. There's like
Mhm.
hundreds in there, but there is an email me link through my profile. And I like never have more than 3 emails in my inbox. I'm like kind of obsessive about it. I really love connecting and encouraging. And, I've even given my phone number to people to text or call me 100%. But Instagram's a great place to go to find me for that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yep,
And even if you don't email her, which you can, obviously, but
right.
just following and like, I don't know, I think you get a lot of not just like motivation and but
Mhm.
you get validation and
Connection.
Yeah. And
Absolutely connection. Like, even if you read within the comments when I talk about something, the
Mhm.
connections that I see there, and somebody saying, "Oh, thank God, I think this all the time, and I thought there was something wrong with me," right? I'm
Yeah.
struggling. Like, it's not always wonderful being a young mom, and I feel like nobody ever talks about that. I mean, just even within the comments, there's such a good community and connection of just really, truly, genuinely caring and compassionate people. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Go check it out because it's really awesome.
Thank you.
In my humble.
Thank you. That's really sweet.
So thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming on the show. I know it's just always good to hear from more seasoned people who are a
Right.
few years ahead of you, but also just how you are and how you do talk about it and acknowledge
I was
everything.
gonna say, I think there needs to be
Yeah.
more of that. One of my
Yeah.
goals is, like, when you go to, like, a pre-command course before battalion command, there's some great, like, general spouses and senior spouses, and it's very proper and,
Mhm.
like, great and cut and dry, but, like, we need more people that talk about it with
Mhm.
transparency and humor.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't even know how to go about it, but I'm always like, I want to start speaking at those things. They need more people that are like kind of like borderline inappropriate,
Yeah.
like, it's okay to have a sense of humor about this life because it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that's important for more people to talk about it in an honest
Mhm.
way. So hopefully, we'll see. One day there'll
So
be a revolution.
I think there are spouses who are slowly changing it. Like a
Yep.
a past episode, I don't even know what number
Mhm.
it would have been, at least a year ago. Amy Upgraft, I don't know if you've heard of her, but
Sounds
she's
really
a lot
familiar.
like you. Like she's like, no, I'm a colonel's wife who shows up
Right.
to things in cowboy boots and
Yep.
my jean jacket. Like I'm not gonna wear the blazer or whatever, and I'm gonna talk
Right.
about when things are hard. And
Right.
yeah, I think
I'd love to see more of it. I would love to see
yeah,
more, like, lieutenant colonels, and generals' wives just kind of talking openly about, everything.
mhm,
I think that's going to shift kind of as everything, but that's just kind of how the world's getting now. Like,
yeah,
we don't have patience for perfection. I don't need to see perfection. That doesn't encourage me. If
yeah,
anything, it makes me feel the other way.
mhm,
So I think it's important to tell those stories about awkward things you did and said and mistakes you made. And hey, guess what? We're still here and he's doing just fine in his career. Like,
yeah.
I didn't ruin anything. But that's another conversation. If you have another episode about, like, awkward ways you mess up, invite me. I'm there for it. I could fill the whole episode.
We that is actually a really good idea. I should do that.
I would totally do it. So, hey, I could talk for like 20 of these. Can you tell I'm not around a
Yeah.
ton of adults? So thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Why do you think I do a podcast? I got 4 littles downstairs
Wow.
and I don't get adult conversations,
I
so I just
know.
do it online. It works, at least for
Well,
me.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. Win words, remember, just because it's hard doesn't mean it has to be miserable. Have a good week, guys.
If you love Red Friday, remember everyone deployed, but are like me and not totally loving everything you're seeing online or at the PX, I would love for you to check out my Red Friday design. You can see them quickly. There's a link in my bio that just says Red Friday t-shirts. There's a shop button on the website, thewaitingwarriors.com, or there's a quick link in the show notes. There are shapes and sizes and styles for everyone, from father-in-law to the dog. Enjoy.